afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Paige Browning with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Wednesday, December 3rd. A man is dead after an encounter with Seattle police officers yesterday in the Rainier Valley neighborhood. Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes says SPD officers confronted a man who was waving a gun near the intersection of MLK Jr. Way South and South Othello Street.
Officers attempted to communicate with him, attempted to negotiate with him, at which time the person pointed the weapon.
Barnes says officers then opened fire on the man. The King County Sheriff's Office is investigating the fatal use of force. Investigators shut down the area for 16 hours as they gathered evidence from the scene into the early hours this morning. In politics today, an idea to tax corporations. State Representative Sean Scott's proposing a payroll tax aimed at Washington's largest companies. It would apply a 5% tax to salaries that exceed $125,000 in those companies.
I will say the most recent poll, if you will, that we have received on this question is the capital gains tax referendum that took place in November of 2024. 2 out of 3 voting Washingtonians elected to continue taxing the rich. That's a pretty loud statement.
The Seattle Democrat says his plan could generate more than $3 billion a year. Republicans, though, say the tax will drive large businesses out of the state, and the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce is already opposing it. Meanwhile, Governor Bob Ferguson is working on his new budget proposal and had this to say about the payroll tax idea.
Any potential revenue stream like that doesn't solve the budget shortfall we're trying to solve for this next year. And so by the time you get revenue like that in the door, it doesn't solve your problem that's right in front of us.
The state's facing a multi-billion-dollar shortfall. Our environment beat today is all about the ocean. For our first story, a downgrade to the West Coast tsunami warning system has been put off for now. Alaska officials say they've found funding to keep operating seismic stations in the most earthquake-prone region of the Pacific Ring of Fire, but only for another month. John Ryan reports.
Seismic stations in Alaska's Aleutian Islands were set to go dark in November after the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration terminated funding. Washington state officials say that would hinder efforts to warn West Coast communities of tsunamis heading their way from the north. Emergency responders say tsunami warnings would still go out, but they could be less accurate or delayed, leaving people less time to flee to higher ground. The University of Alaska stepped up to fund the seismic stations through January in the absence of federal funding. The head of Alaska's Earthquake Center says he's optimistic that the federal agency will restore funding to help keep people in 4 states safer from tsunamis. NOAA officials say seismic data is still being collected from other parts of Alaska. John Ryan, KUOW News.
This is a good week for viewing the ocean or the sound. Another round of king tides is coming to Puget Sound this Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Low-lying coastal areas could flood for a few hours each morning. King tides will come to Washington's outer coast starting tomorrow. The year's highest tides come in November, December, and January when the sun, moon, and earth line up. The highest seas are forecast to swell into Seattle around 7:30 Sunday morning. Oceanographers say the king tides offer a glimpse of the future as global warming causes sea levels to rise. And on that note, oceanographers at the University of Washington have found that ocean acidification is accelerating more quickly here than elsewhere. They decoded data sampled from native corals. KNKX environment reporter Bellamy Palethorpe has the story.
Ocean acidification is sometimes described as global warming's evil twin. The ocean absorbs CO2 from fossil fuel emissions, causing the water to become more corrosive.
Ocean acidification is already impacting the growth of oysters, clams, plankton, which in turn are important food sources for salmon, seabirds, and other marine organisms.
Mary Margaret Stoll is the lead author on the new study. Her fascination with ocean acidification led her to work with a set of orange cup corals that were collected 130 years ago by naturalists aboard the USS Albatross, a tall ship on a mission to survey halibut for the federal government. Stoll says she's still amazed that this uncommissioned collection ended up available to her in the archives of the Smithsonian.
These corals were incredibly well preserved. There was so much information attached to them as well about the depths of collection and where they were collected and when they were collected.
Stoll and her team took tiny samples from them, then followed in the path of the USS Albatross to get coral samples from today. Then they compared the information stored in their skeletons. Professor Alex Gagne co-authored the paper.
You can read that information, much like an ice core or tree rings.
He says they found that the Salish Sea has become 40% more acidic than other parts of the ocean since the start of the Industrial Revolution. This much faster pace is due to deep upwelling that amplifies the acidification here. Gagne says the results surprised him and led him to start researching ways to remove carbon from the atmosphere.
And the fact that we're at this point where carbon dioxide removal has to be a significant part of our path forward is just a reflection on that we haven't done the steep emission reductions that we need to do.
He says carbon removal needs to accompany emissions reductions in the 2030s to keep local waters healthy. The study is published in the journal Nature Communications. I'm Bellamy Palethorpe reporting.
A few shorter stories you should know about today. Kevin KUOW, the infamous South Hill rapist, has died. KUOW's linked to dozens of attacks, mostly on women, in Spokane between 1977 and 1981. He died this morning at age 78 at a Federal Way adult family home, likely of natural causes, according to Federal Way police. A judge ordered his release from McNeil Island in October due to a severe decline in health. In court news, a judge has declared a mistrial in the case of a former Garfield High School coach charged with repeatedly raping a former student beginning in 2013. Jurors who heard the case against the volunteer weightlifting coach Walter Jones told a judge yesterday they could not reach a unanimous verdict. The Seattle Times reports a new trial date's been set for next March. And a business note, Amazon has agreed to pay back about $3.8 million to workers over violations of the city's gig worker protections. The Office of Labor Standards says it's the second largest settlement ever for the agency. The city says the company's Amazon Flex business failed to provide premium pay and paid sick time to many of its gig delivery drivers. To Tacoma now. Tacoma does not allow evictions during cold weather months. Now, the city council's thinking of changing that. Some landlords have complained of tenants refusing to pay rent for long stretches of time with no option to evict them. If passed, Tacoma's new proposal would only protect low-income or middle-income renters from eviction and only for part of the winter. Tyron Moore with the housing advocacy group Tacoma for All worries an income cap will make things hard for tenants.
It will take a universal protection and transform it into a bureaucratic maze that every tenant will have to fight out through the city and then in court. Most tenants who are eligible will never actually see their rights if this is passed.
Council members are expected to discuss the proposal tonight. A final note today, please do not cut down a tree on city property to put up in your living room and decorate with lights. City officials are reminding people it is illegal to chop down city trees for Christmas. The Capitol Hill Seattle blog reports someone chopped down a conifer from Miller Park on Monday after a rare Tibetan cypress was chopped down from the Arboretum last year. That's all for today from the KUOW newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Paige Browning. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See ya.